I think for a parent, you need to observe your child from day one. You need to see, are they hitting those developmental milestones, the
Okay.
smiling, the
Okay.
engaging.
How important is early intervention, and what should parents do first when they are concerned about their children or their child? Not every difficult child is a naughty child. Many parents punish behaviors they don't actually understand. So hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Ruth and this is Raising Kids in Real Time Unfiltered. As a certified professional in advanced parenting skills, I am here to make parenting simple and practical for you. Today we're talking about the early signs parents ignore and the guilt many families carry in silence, and also how early support can completely change a child's future. And to help us unpack this important conversation today, I'm joined by Jami. Jami is a qualified social work practitioner who has worked closely with children and families, navigating developmental and additional needs in children. So hello, Jami. Thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome.
Would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Jami. I am a social worker. I've been a social worker for the last 14 years, and I've worked with children and families of all ages and all backgrounds, dealing with a number of issues, including domestic abuse, disability, mental health. I've worked with babies, I've worked with older children, I've worked with looked after children, and currently I work in children with disabilities. I manage a local authority service looking after children with severe and complex needs. So children is something I'm very, very passionate about, particularly children who have disabilities, and supporting them and their families to make sure that they have the best outcomes.
Thank you so much, Jami. So my first question today is, many parents see behaviors like screaming. Many parents experience behaviors like screaming, shouting, shutting down, aggression, or even slamming doors. So how can a parent tell when this may be more than just a bad behavior?
I think that every parent is the expert of their own child, and that's what we always say to parents in social work. So for some children, this can just be due to a lack of boundaries, and you may find that for some children there might be a difference between when they're at home and when they're at school, or when they're with particular individuals. However, when this behavior, in terms of that kind of dysregulation as we call it, is seen in a lot of environments, and it seems to be a constant behavior, then that's something that parents need to take note of. And it's not to be seen in isolation. Even as adults, sometimes we become quite overwhelmed and we may behave in a way that's not, usual. However, for a child, if it's not very easy to soothe them, if they're showing clear signs of distress, then it's something for the parent to be observant about, and for them to observe those behaviors over the course of time. Maybe keep a diary as well, and to be able to see how the behaviors progress. Oftentimes they will see these behaviors very, very early on, from kind of that toddler stage, really, where the child kind of maybe is just not soothed very easily, doesn't listen, etc. So some of those behaviors can be worrying. But as I said, it's not to be seen in isolation. You will see other developmental markers, such as whether they are sociable and how they engage in social situations. How is their speech? How is their eye contact? How do they relate to others? How do they express emotions? And that includes empathy for others as well. So oftentimes children who have additional needs can be very empathic, almost too much sometimes. And then you have other children on the other end who might not show any empathy at all. So it's looking for those extremes in behavior, because things such as autism, they work on a spectrum. So you have, mild, moderate, and then the more severe aspect, or professionals will say high functioning autism. I think another thing that's really important to note is that there's children that have almost two personalities, not to say that they have mental health, where they present quite calmly at school, but at home they're completely dysregulated.
Yeah.
This is something that we call masking, and it's very common in girls actually, where they're able to get through the day in quite strict social situations. So if you think about school has routines, boundaries, the bell goes, so they know they have to move to the next lesson, they know they have to engage with the teacher, but when they get home, it doesn't have the same routine, structure, etc., and they can just literally just let it all out. So it's again, I come back to the first thing where I said that parents are the expert of their own children. I think there's an intuition that comes when you're looking at your child and you're thinking there's something not quite right here. And it's to follow that parental instinct and use it as an opportunity to observe your child very closely, take note and take stocks of the things that are worrying, and then use this to develop an overall picture of your child. But I will highlight, don't look at things in isolation. Are they just having a bad day, or have they been having a series of bad days? Also, I think the last thing I will say is that people underestimate the impact of childhood experiences. So there may be difficulties and challenges within the family environment, maybe trauma from separation, maybe if the child is unwell, or just something within the family environment. Trauma in itself can sometimes present in a way that changes children's behavior. And I think people really underestimate that and are quick to label children. So if you know, for example, that you've gone through something quite traumatic, and trauma can be experienced differently for children than it is for adults. I'll give an example. If you've moved from another country as an adult, that's a very big thing, but for some children that can be quite traumatic, because they've left behind a life that they've known and they've moved to somewhere new places, new people. And whereas adults may have that strength and resilience to be able to cope, some children can present as quite traumatized. And that's not for every child. I'm not saying every child that relocates will experience that, but it's just an example to say that some things that might present as additional needs may actually be the result of trauma or environmental changes. So again, it's about observing your child, thinking about what's going on, what has happened, what are the potential triggers, and then putting together that holistic picture of the situation.
Okay, Jami. Thank you so much, Jami. So would you say, should parents start observing their child or their children from the age where they start displaying tantrums? Because I spoke about tantrums in my previous videos. And tantrums usually starts from age 2. Actually, so that's what they call the terrible twos. So would you say parents should start observing from that stage where they start to show those tantrum behaviors and things like that? So should tantrum now also be a sign of something wrong, or just...
No, I think most parents are naturally observant. I think for a parent, you need to observe your child from day one. You need to see, are they hitting those developmental milestones, the smiling, the engaging, the laughing, the playing? Do they show interest in other children? Do they show interest in books, in faces? If you think about little babies, in the first 6 months, when they meet someone new, they kind of stare at them for a while. How do they display things like stranger danger? So some babies, they don't like to be held or carried or anything like that. And over the course of time, you would develop an understanding of the individual personality of your child. Yes, tantrums do start around that age of 2, but some children never experience tantrums. They're just naturally very chilled, very relaxed children, and they're unfazed by it. Whereas some children who I think are empaths, they feel things very, very deeply. So they have these very big emotions, and they have to be supported to kind of express it in a helpful way. I think something that all parents need to know is that behavior is a form of communication. So rather than seeing tantrums or any other kind of behavior you're unhappy with as this is naughty or this isn't good, you should ask your question as as to what is this behavior trying to tell me. Because there's a grace we give to children when they're babies. When they cry, we say maybe they're hungry, maybe they need their nappy changed, maybe it's hot, maybe it's cold. As the child gets older, you hear yourself saying to them, but you're big now, you can't still be behaving like this. Actually, for that child, maybe they don't want to be big, they just want to be cuddled and held. So it's to see what the reasons are for the tantrums whilst maintaining boundaries. I think that's very, very important. I think where parents maybe will start getting worried is that if a child is developing in the normative development, so it's hitting those developmental milestones, and even if it's a few months or delayed, etc., but they are hitting them and retaining them, then that's a positive sign. Where parents maybe start to get worried or should be observant is if a child has already hit a milestone, so for example saying a few words, and then suddenly, rather than now moving on to what's called pre-verbal, where they don't have verbal speech. So it's those kind of looking out for those regressions in development, because oftentimes the regression in development is linked to changes in behavior. Because if you're not able to communicate, if people are not able to understand you, I think even you as an adult will become very frustrated.
Yes, you would be
very, very frustrated. Equally, if you as an adult, if you think about it, if you're placed in an environment where you're too hot, it's too noisy, there's too many people, and you can find that quite overwhelming. Whilst as an adult you're able to contain that, for a child who has sensory needs or sensory kind of sensitivities, that's completely overwhelming, and there's nothing else they can do but have a tantrum. They are going to have a tantrum because they're not able to say, I'm hot, there's too many people, it's too loud, and they're not able to say, I do not want to be here. Sometimes they might not, even for older children, if we think about teenagers, etc., they might not be able to have the verbal kind of skills to be able to put together, this is the feelings I'm feeling, this is why I'm feeling it, and this is what I want you to do about it. What they want is immediate kind of solution, immediate addressing of that situation. And where that doesn't happen, that's where you see the tantrums, that's where you see the lashing out. And it's often a thing that parents, again, don't necessarily give a grace to, but even older children, sometimes you need to tell them, can you use your words? Say a lot to very younger children, use your words, tell me what you're feeling. I can't help you if you don't tell me. But we need, as children grow older, we kind of don't give them that same grace to be able to say to them, you need to be able to communicate to me what it is that you need. Equally, I think as a parent, if you see that your child struggles to express themselves verbally, I wonder how many parents take a step back and think, is there other ways in which I can find to communicate with my child? Maybe if I show them pictures to say, okay, do you want biscuit or do you want juice? And you show them pictures and allow them not to have the pressure of having to say biscuit or juice, or just pointing at that picture. Sometimes in that moment, that's maybe what can stop the tantrum, and it's about having that adaptive parenting to kind of say, what is this behavior trying to tell me? How best can I get this child to be able to communicate their needs to me in a way? And how can I regulate my own emotions as well? Because as a parent, you need to have that self-regulation, because if you get annoyed, you get angry very quickly, you get frustrated, and let's be honest, if it's in public, you feel embarrassed. You can react in a way that escalates the situation. You can act in a way where you make the child feel that sense of shame, and that sense of shame in itself says to that child that you don't understand me and you're not trying to understand me. And that can just lead to an escalation in the behaviors as well. It's really, really important that, again, we get to know our children, we get to know their nuances, we get to know their little behaviors, and that we as parents adapt to help and support them to manage in the world around them as well.
Thank you very much, Tammy. Thank you. I was going to ask about the early signs of developmental or additional needs that parents often miss in children, but you've actually touched on them. So I want to please be specific. You've mentioned verbal communication, and so we're going to move from that now. So I'm going to ask Yeah, I want to ask now, how important is early intervention, and what should parents do first when they are concerned about their children or their child?
I think early intervention is really, really, really essential because it helps to close the gap
Okay.
between the child who maybe not, falling off or regressing in terms of their developmental milestones or even social milestones as well. So as soon as parents notice something, they should, as I said, keep a record of it, see how best to gain evidence around it. But then they can go to the school, go to the nursery, and even before we get to school and nursery, I wonder how many parents know about children's centres and family hubs in their community. These are places that you can go with your babies, any child under 5, and you can go there and get advice and support. I also wonder how many parents utilise their health visitors as well in those early stages to say, oh, I've noticed the baby, he was talking, but now he's not said any new words, he's not even repeating or anything like that. How do we utilize these community services to kind of voice our concerns? I think that sometimes that, I talked about it earlier, that parents can have that sense of shame, and there's also that comparison, and also you're also very protective of your child, so you want to say, oh, he's okay, that's just how they are, in their family they take a while to do this, they do that, and that's how the dad is, or that's how the mom is. And I think sometimes in trying to be protective of the child, because people can judge, to be honest, and they can ask questions, in trying to be protective of the child, we shouldn't lose chances to intervene and to support where you as a parent know very well within yourself that there's an issue. And in the very least, the best you can do for that child is to go to a professional, whether it's a GP, the health visitor, the nursery, the children's centre, and say, I'm not quite sure about this behaviour that I'm seeing, this presentation or this delay in their development. Could you please give me your opinion on it? And sometimes it may be, you just need to give them more time. And sometimes you may get a response that actually maybe they do need that additional support. And particularly where there's speech and language difficulties, early intervention is really, really, really key to help support them to develop those skills, and also to equip you as a parent to support them at home. One of the biggest mistakes parents can make is to think that, when they go to school it'll be fine because they'll be around their friends, etc. The first school and the main school is your home, and you are the first teachers as well. So you have to be invested in their development, so that no matter what, even when they go to school, when they go to nursery, etc., what you're doing is complementing it and supporting it, and therefore giving them the best outcomes. Because ultimately, this is why we pay for things like tuition.
Yes, of course.
Because, even though in the UK education is free, we still pay for tuition because we want to give them that extra edge. So when you have a child that maybe you can see that they're delayed in an area, as a parent, naturally you want to give them that extra edge, and you may not know how. So it's going out there and seeking their support. Early intervention is important, as I said, just to round up, because it helps to close that gap. The sooner you're putting in support, the better that the outcomes can be. There's a thing in science they call neuroplasticity, and it's the brain's ability to learn and retain skills. And babies and children have it more so than adults do. So the more we're repeating something, trying to teach them something, it forms new kind of pathways in the brain, and it helps them to learn and grow and develop. That's why children are so curious, because their brain is just trying to grow. So with that in mind, we should always have that sense of wonder around our children, always be exposing them to something new. So early intervention is very important because it helps them to catch up, to develop new skills, to retain and regain skills they may have lost, and you want them to keep those language skills. And also it's a way of kind of bonding with your child as well. If it's just on a parent-child level, it's a way of supporting their social development. So maybe when they go to, playgroup groups, etc. Over the course of time, they may cry, maybe they snatch somebody's toy, maybe they're not very nice the first time. But by the time you've gone the 3-4 times, they'll learn the rules where they'll be able to say, that's not very nice. You can't push. Children, if you ever think about it, children love to watch the same program over and over again, and you're thinking, why is this entertaining? You have seen this episode. In fact, you should know this episode word by word. But one thing that makes children feel safe is predictability, expectations, boundaries. When they know, even if a child with severe autism, when they know that if you do X, the consequence of it is going to be Y. They might still do it, but you see that they'll look at the parent like, I know what you're going to do. I know how you're going to react. So sometimes if I think about some of the children we work with, the older ones, they'll go to hit, and you hear the mom go, if you, and they'll quickly run away and find something else. So, children really, really thrive on predictability. They thrive on those boundaries. They thrive on repetition. And for some children, that you're required to repeat a bit more. For some children, you're constantly reinforcing, particularly those with additional needs. And I know that can be very frustrating, particularly where children have complex needs. But they do have, I believe, every single child has the potential to learn. Every single child can be taught coping strategies. So you will see that some children have sensory overload. So you see the parent comes prepared to say, okay, this environment is too noisy. I know we're going to have dysregulated behavior in this environment. So they bring their air defenders.
I see them.
They bring their soothing exercises, their fidget toys. So as a parent, you have to equip your child, irrespective of their need, to be able to manage and form part of the world around them as best as they can. And naturally, as parents, we compare children to each other. But you should compare your child only to how your child was yesterday. That's the best comparison.
That's a good one.
How were they yesterday? Is today a better day? And think about how you want them to be tomorrow. Honestly, as a parent, if we approach parenthood that way, honestly, all of you bring out the best in each and every child, rather than comparing them to another child, irrespective of their need. Irrespective.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Thank you. So when you were explaining and talking about early signs and why early intervention is important, you mentioned children's centers and doctors, health visitors. So I wanted to talk about people in Africa now, because now we're talking about the UK, How about people in Africa that haven't got access to children's centers? What do you think? I know you don't live in Africa, you're based here in London, but for the sake of people living in Africa, what do you think? What support do you think they can get? People who haven't got access, like I said, mentioned earlier, to children's centers. So what other support do you think they can get?
The interesting thing about children's centers and family hubs is they're actually based off the kind of sense of community responsibility that we have in our African, Asian and Caribbean communities. So it's about them looking and tapping in, and the great thing is we have social media now to see if there's other groups, other mums that they can reach out to get advice from, and other health professionals in their kind of localities as well. I think the big thing is overcoming that sense of shame and that sense of difference. But what I have seen, which I'm really, really happy and proud about, is I'm seeing a greater movement to understanding neurodiversity in countries such as Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone. There's a lot, so it is about going on social media and reaching out and seeing if there's any things in the community schemes that will assist in kind of supporting parents and getting that advice, really. I think it's also making connections with somebody. I think that sometimes the understanding of disability and acceptance of disability is something that doesn't come without kind of stereotypes within certain communities. Even within the UK, today. We still have that, as I still had a conversation yesterday around this, where, we have to have some very difficult conversations with parents who think that, I'm going to pray and this child is going to be better. And we have to say to the parents, yes, definitely pray. Yes, they will improve, but not necessarily in the instant that you hope that they would do. And if they do, then we'll be the first to celebrate that miracle with you. But if they don't, we still need you to do your very best as a parent. And those are the most compassionate ways that we can have conversations with our parents, while still showing respect for their spirituality, whilst acknowledging cultural kind of views around disability and any shame that exists with that as well. Those things, I think, are universal. They exist still here with parents in the UK, where neurodiversity and disability is more widely accepted. But I think back home that's still somewhat of a barrier. But like I said, I'm really pleased to see that it's changing. So ultimately, what I would say, if someone's in dysphoria, I can't even say the word. If someone is back home, diaspora, that's it. Is that is look at what's available locally. Put a call out, and if there isn't anything, maybe you're the one that needs to start that conversation. Really, but the biggest thing is not parenting can be lonely, but you do not have to be alone. There's always another parent nearby, and it's finding those people that you can trust, who will listen, who you can speak to about your concerns, and they might not know it, but they might know where to signpost you to get advice and support. So for back home, it is seen if there's any local groups, NGOs, any specialist hospitals and treatments. There are more and more of them popping out as well. There's a whole host of information online, but I think the reason why I've steered away from saying parents should go online is you can go down a rabbit hole and give yourself a lot of anxiety. True. Yeah. So it's best to really try and speak to a medical professional where possible. But as I said, it's about taking that holistic observation of your child, but as a parent, acting fast and acting early, making sure that child is well stimulated, well engaged, reducing screen time.
That's another thing.
Reducing screen times. Screen time can be beneficial, but wherever possible, engage with your child one-to-one. Speech. A lot of speech is how the mouth moves. And if you see a lot of little babies, when you're moving your mouth, they're also trying to think, how to move their mouth to get the words out. So a lot of what children do is a reflection of what they're seeing people do. Even if you think about it, we buy like little kitchens for children, and it's always interesting to see them, like they'll put the pretend vegetables into the pot, they pretend to stir it. They're only doing what they've seen their parents do. So in so much as possible, back home, try and engage your children in your day-to-day activities, cooking, cleaning the house, hoovering. And also there's such a power in song, teaching them songs, like some things like tidy up, can become a song. Let's put our clothes on this morning can become a song. But you're not going to really develop that understanding of your child's needs if you don't spend time with them. You have to spend meaningful time with them, really. I think that's the starting point. All right, Jamie, thank you so much. Thank you. Now the final question I want to ask you is, I'm going to be asking two questions I'm going to be killing two birds with one stone right now. So from your experience working with children and family, what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about children with disability or children on the spectrum? And then the next question will be, what practical advice would you give to parents who feel overwhelmed, confused, or even guilty while trying to support a child with additional needs? I hope those questions are not too many for you. No, that's fine. Thank you. I think the difficulty is that for a parent, when your child is born, you're born with so much hope. and expectations of what they'll be. They'll grow up to be a doctor, they'll grow up to be a nurse, they'll do this, they'll do that. You make so many plans from when you're pregnant to when you give birth to the child. And a lot of the kind of worry and guilt maybe parents have is, how is society going to treat my child that has this diagnosis? How will they navigate the world around them independently, particularly when I'm not here to protect them anymore? How would they achieve? How would they grow? How would they thrive? Will society be kind to them? Will others take advantage of them? Will people understand them? So a lot of the things I see are questions that are from loving and kind parents who just want the child to they want to protect them. Also, there is a natural worry that will come with, am I going to therefore be a parent for the rest of my life as well? Because, maybe particularly if a child has maybe severe additional needs, the parent would think that, so they're not going to eventually go off to university, get their own house, get married, etc. These are the things that are not said out loud.
Yeah, true.
Because it carries that sense of shame sometimes for a parent. You want to say, okay, this is the child that I have, and they're a blessing from God. However, I'm sad because they might not get married, they might never live alone. And I know from working with the parents that I do that even saying that can carry some sense of guilt and shame with that. And it's important for parents to be able to voice those worries, those anxieties, that fear of the future. And that's something that might continue throughout the course of the child's life. And there'll be many kind of hard and difficult decisions sometimes to make. So, for example, when all the children are dressing up and they're going to school, the primary school days, the secondary school days, and then you're thinking, oh, is my child going to be able to kind of be doing GCSEs, doing A levels? Those are points that can be very hard for parents. You're like, okay, because maybe your child has needs are such that they're following a different curriculum. And they might not have the same kind of experiences as other children. I think the best way to approach is really to talk about it and to name it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to maybe make you feel 100% better, but keeping it in, that it also doesn't help. You have to be able to talk about how you feel, how that kind of affects you, and after that, then you need to face your child, because this is the child that you have, and they're capable of so much. And whilst maybe they may make smaller developmental steps, or they may achieve things that maybe for other children are trivial, for your own child that's a massive step, and you need to celebrate those steps. So it might take your child 7 years to say mama, but the day that they say it, as a parent, it's like you've been given gold. Celebrate those moments, and the beauty is that your child can achieve something. You have to believe that. Whatever it is within that, they're running their own race, and you're just there to coach them along to make sure they're going the right path, they're going the right direction. They can and they will achieve things. And if you get caught up in them making those big steps, the same as their developmentally normative peers, that in itself can kind of grieve your heart. But if you just accept them for who they are, and the fact that they will run their own race, they'll have their own achievements, their own gold is different from somebody else's gold, and you celebrate it with the same level of passion and grace that you would do, irrespective of what it was, the achievement. That in itself is very healing, I find. And I think that's important to kind of link in with other parents. I can't impress on how important it is to have a community around you who's very supportive, who can kind of understand what you're going through, and who you can talk to as well. I think there's so many inspirations online as well, and there's this young man on Instagram, Kevin, and I follow him, and he has autism, and when I see his wins, so he went to work get his first paycheck, you know, different things like that, and that warms my heart. I don't have a child with additional needs, but just seeing that his mum is so proud to post those achievements like it would for any child. I think those stories are very important to follow, because it gives you a sense of hope. So I think that, you know, really to sum up, early intervention is important. Being honest and realistic is important. Yes, you know, particularly as Christians, we may pray about things, but also doing practical things as well to support our children and young people to achieve is really, really important. I don't know if I answered all aspects of your question.
Yes, you have, Jami, you have. Thank you so much. Yeah, you actually did answer all the questions. Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate you. So I just want to say, I just want to add just a few lines to what Jami has said. You are not alone. Do not isolate yourself, like I always say. Parents, find a community, join a community. You are not alone. And remember, I always say this, that you are doing better than you think. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks again to Jami. Thank you. We might be having you again next time, Jami. We might have you to come. We might need you to come back, you know, to us again. Thank you so much, everyone, and I'll see you in my next video. In my next video, I'll actually be interviewing someone who is on the spectrum, so he can share his experience, you know, with us. Yeah. Thank you so much again, and I'll see you in my next video. Take care. Bye-bye.